some Latin. It was quite universal, and then you can tell. I think that they were trying to create a religion that was more universal and less third dimensional, because the people are constantly fighting over whose God is bigger and better than everyone else's. And so this is why, the why of it all. We had, as I was saying before the break, that we have priests who are clearly making up gods over a period of thousands of years, many thousands of years, as it turns out, going back to Stone Age, and then pre. Let's see, 10 to 20,000 years, we find some artifacts that are religiously based, like the Venus of Laussel, and goddess-worshipping figures and so forth. And so we have this whole long history of religious ideation, and then we have clear-cut priesthoods developing, and they are building buildings such as temples and Stonehenge, for example, sacred sites that have both a spiritual function and also a astronomical observation function. That in a nutshell is astrotheology. So you look back at these times and you see this development going on of religious ideology or ideas, and then you start and you see, well, there's a priesthood, and it's got this well-refined technology of creating myths and religions. And, of course, then you have this culmination in Egypt, which is just astounding. And I didn't even know how astounding it was until I wrote Christ in Egypt, or digging into all of the ancient texts, thousands of them, and saying, wow, they really had it down. I mean, their whole culture was... it's like Islam today. It's all revolving around religion. Everything revolved around it. The smallest task had some kind of religious meaning. And they built their entire culture over their religion, and it is largely solar. There's a lot of lunar aspects to it as well, and other celestial events. And then, of course, we have, in Egyptian mythology, we have dog-headed or baboon-headed gods, and then there's Anubis with the jackal head, and then the crocodile, Sobek, and so forth. And so their whole perspective was divine, all of creation, and so, but yet that they're making these myths up. Obviously, is there really a crocodile-headed god named Sobek, and so forth? So we know we have people making up myths. We have priests making up religions. And right before Christianity, there was not only the Mithraism coming into blossom, but there had already been in Alexandria a concerted effort to combine two pagan cultures, the Egyptian and the Greek, with Judaism. Judaism is often left out of the picture in this regard, but in fact the evidence shows that this particular cult was created for the Jews as well, and I'm talking about the cult of Serapis, this brand new god that was made up 2 to 3 centuries before the Common Era, before Christ supposedly lived. Here we have a clear cut. There was no man there. There was no Evemerism. There's absolutely no one would ever say that, because what the priests did was take Osiris and his Apis bull and combine them for the specific reason of appealing to Greeks and Egyptians together in order to unite those two factions in Egypt. There were a lot of Greeks and Jews in Alexandria during that era, and they were, all these factions, the Greeks, the Egyptians, and the Jews were always fighting, the Jews amongst themselves as well, with the Samaritans fighting with the Judeans going on there. And so obviously the powers that be, the wealthy, powerful people who were both politicians and priests, were saying, look, we got to do something. These people are constantly fighting. There's rioting. And it's religious. It was religiously based fighting. So we need to create a new god to combine them, to bring them together, to have them. the Greeks shared with the Jews a compulsion to do animal sacrifice. And so this was not really all that palatable to the Egyptians of the time. And so they thought, well, let's make up this god who combines Osiris and the Apis bull. The bull, the Jews in the Old Testament, the bull is very important to them to be sacrificing, and they constantly slaughtering bulls and throwing the blood of the bulls upon the people, and explaining the New Testament line, "Let His blood be upon us and our children." So this is another thing too, that my work in this absolves Jews of the Christ killer epithet, and I think that really is an important point. Seriously, I mean, at last we can say Jews are not responsible for murdering God. Can we get over it now? End of story. That was one of the things I realized. I thought, my God, they've been slandered hideously all these centuries for this, this story being misunderstood by the rabble. But